Right.
All right, awesome.
Great.
All right, so let me go ahead and get started. So let me click on the next slide. So today's agenda, we're going to be overviewing of what is grad school, how to find a program and school, what does the application process look like, what funding opportunities are available, and what resources are available specifically at Fullerton for grad students. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So why go to grad school? So within, the opportunities that grad school provide, you do have greater income potential. You do decrease your likelihood of being unemployed. There are increased leadership roles. There are requirements for some jobs to possess a master's or graduate degree or professional degree. There is a greater ability to help your family and community. That comes with some of the networking opportunities. Even if it's unrelated to your field, there are access, it does create access to healthcare and retirement plans. With some jobs, you are required to pay into a retirement fund with your paycheck. So that's one of the, accesses that you do get with certain jobs that you do get with only, moving into a job with a graduate degree. And these are some of the jobs that you can get with a graduate degree: creative director, tenured or tenure track faculty, art director, product designer. If you're looking at, I know there's a poli-sci person in here. You're looking at potentially, the public sector, for example, government, administration. There is a possibility to run for public office. Those types of jobs, if you're looking into that sector, as well as law enforcement. So it really depends on what your interests are and what kind of program you do choose. You can also look into K-12 education. That's also a possibility. So you're not limited to just, for example, if you get a bachelor's degree in art, you don't have to get a master's of fine art, or you can also go like the teaching route for K-12 education. So that's also a possibility for you.
All right. Oh, did you want me to chime in on that?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to kind of expand on that slide that we were on there with kind of potential careers. That's by no means an exhaustive list, right? Just a couple of ideas. Another thing for visual arts majors, if you're interested in drawing and painting or sculpture of some of the more traditional fine arts, gallery directors, exhibition design, curation. For the performing arts side, being artistic director, moving into directorial kinds of roles, starting your own studio or dance company, for instance, starting your own arts nonprofit organization. And with a lot of these careers, it kind of is important to keep in mind that like the first slide mentioned, a graduate degree may be required for some of them, but not for all. And for a lot of these careers that we're talking about and just mentioning here, it's optional. The being a tenured or tenure track full-time faculty, or even an associate professorship at a four-year university, you kind of can't even get into the game without that master's degree. That's one that's very different and very clearly defined compared to these other careers, which are going to depend almost as much on your portfolio and the experiences that you do as an undergrad and as a grad student as on the degree itself. Does that make sense? So it's still, even if you go on to grad school, it doesn't necessarily determine that now all of a sudden the door to the art director is open, or the door to the museum curator position is open, because those positions don't require necessarily a graduate degree. It may be an asset. It has the potential to contribute to you being a more desirable candidate. But there are literally some fields where the portfolio is all that matters. And the graduate degree, if it helps you build your portfolio, then yes, it contributed, but not necessarily directly, as compared to, I want to teach in higher education at a community college or a four-year, where it's going to be a requirement to have at least a master's degree. Or if it was in music, a doctorate in music. I also just wanted to clarify that when it comes to teaching at the elementary through middle school and high school level in the school setting, that's a very different thing. It's post it's post-undergraduate training that is required, but not what we think of when we say traditionally grad school. So when we're talking about grad school for the arts, we're thinking about masters of fine arts, and doctorate degrees, at least for music. Masters and Masters of Fine Arts are the terminal degrees for most visual and other performing areas, but there is a doctoral degree available in music. But that's not going to help you teach K through 12. That's a completely separate thing. It's called a California Teaching Credential, and it's only good in California. So if you're thinking, which is why there's the art education track that Victoria is involved in, because that'll help prepare her to go into that teaching credential program right after she finishes her bachelor's, and she'll be able to then go and start applying for teaching positions. Whereas grad school, if she was to not get a teaching credential and get a master's instead, she might still be hard pressed to have the right kind of training, and she may not be legally allowed into at least a public school in the state of California.
I was trying to decide like between community college and like 12th grade. So
well, I'll go ahead and kind of chime in on that. And I know Paxton had a question as well. But in terms of getting, a teaching credentials do also lead to a master's of education in some instances. Some of the classes that you take for your teaching credential will count toward you receiving your master's of education for K through 12. So that is also, if you do want that master's degree, you could also have the potential, and it'll also grant you that access to teaching at the community college or higher ed level if that's something you want to do on the side. I do know of individuals who have got their master's in education and who that's something that they do on the side. They do teach, those kinds of classes, as kind of like their side profession, but they focus more on the education side. They don't really focus on the, for example, the art side, because they have to focus on what their master's degree is. And then Paxton, your question?
Yeah, so I'm interested in being an art teacher, possibly for the public school system. And I don't know which route to take. Do I get a master's in art? Do I get a single subject? I don't know which route to go. It's something that I'm interested in doing, just to teach art. I don't want to teach anything else. I just want to be an art teacher, or I'm interested in doing so. And I just don't know the route to go. So that's why I'm at this meeting. And I was also interested to see if I can get my master's in illustration as well. Like, can I do a dual major where I get a teaching credential and do an illustration graduate degree? I'm not sure. So
it kind of goes back to what we were discussing. They're kind of two separate tracks. You can get your teaching credential and focus your work in K-12. And you can maybe pursue the master's in education later down the road. But what some people even do is maybe they'll get their teaching credential first, and then they'll pursue their master's in the area that they want to pursue their master's, or they'll do it vice versa. They'll pursue a master's, and then they'll go get a teaching credential to teach K-12. But I feel like that's rarely seen, as opposed to the other way around. I see a lot of more, for example, K-12 teachers who have their teaching credential, then they go and get a master's in a different field. I know people who they have the teaching credential and they got their bachelor's in biology. And then they go and get a master's in biology as well, but they have that teaching credential either way. And that's more so because they want to branch into like the community college setting. And the other thing is that even if you were to stay in the K through 12 system, you get your credential so you can get in and get your teaching experience, and then you want to increase your income potential. And if you get that master's later, then you can get a little bit more pay staying in the teaching profession in the K through 12 setting.
So you would have to get a master's in education to become a teacher?
So you can keep your teaching credential, but say you get a master's, so even if you have your teaching credential and you get a master's in that illustration, having a master's can get you a pay bump of like $5,000 a year.
Okay, so I could do an illustration as my master's degree and start doing my teaching credentials. And is that like a possible route, or?
So not at the, I would say not at the same time.
Definitely not at the same time.
You have to start one and then the other.
Okay.
And like Kristen was saying, it's much more common and usually more productive to get your teaching credential first.
Okay.
Right? Because the teaching credential program will give you the pedagogy foundation you need, how to manage a classroom. Because even if it's single subject, I just teach art, it's still you're engaging students at a unique developmental phase that you need to be prepared for. I've seen too many people come out crying when they get thrown in. I didn't need a credential. I got in on an emergency credential, you know, and they're like, oh my God, I don't want to teach ever again. Right. So, it's better to go through a teaching credential program to get started and do the master's later.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually know someone who's in the Master's of Music program who is a K-12 music teacher, and she has her teaching credential and she's going through that program for the Master's in music. And so it's, like I said, something that's more commonly seen done the other way around, as opposed to first getting your Master's in illustration. And again, you get a lot of that experience where if you say where you were to apply for a community college job, once you have your teaching credential and then you follow with your master's, you can get a community college job teaching in that art field, as opposed to if you were to get that master's in education, you'd kind of be more directed toward teaching more like education pedagogy classes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and so, you know, you do have also salary differences once you have, you know, between your master's and your bachelor's degrees. You know, if you're looking to commercial art and graphic design, there is, you know, that pay grade of, you know, $7K a year. And these are just averages, medians nationally, and it all depends, you know, on the state you live in, the cost of living. You know, some states, they will pay you more depending on the cost of living. Some states are less expensive to live in. Some, you know, fields, disciplines are more accessible depending on the state you live in. For example, you know, of course, we live in the state of California, so you might have more access to certain fields related to like film, video, and photographic arts because of the industry. So it all really depends on the access to these jobs and careers as far as arts go.
And if I just want to underscore the point also is the relationship between the salary and the degree is difficult to track accurately. And this source, Georgetown University, did a great job connecting the information, but it's not always the case that it's like, oh, because you have a master's, boom, you get this bump in pay, at least in some of these fields. When you're talking about education, like we were just talking about with art education, because it's more standardized and, you know, part of a state system, then there's, you know, pay scales and they are more structured, and it's like, oh, you have a master's, you get more money. But if you're talking about becoming a gallery, you're an art history major, you go on to, I want to work in a museum or gallery, it's still going to be much more about the work that you've done in curation, exhibition, your organizational and leadership skills. And, you know, that may not necessarily be because you have the master's degree. Depends on what you did with that master's degree, right?
And not only that, but this is something that applies for all majors, but also who you know, who you were able to get in contact with during grad school. It really does go back to that. And that's just, like I said, again, not just with art, but with all disciplines. And, you know, this is especially true, especially with political science. I know Juliana is a political science major, but this is something that's very true with like those disciplines where when it comes to like management and administration, those jobs really do kind of networking plays a heavy role in those. And so, you know, what does graduate school look like? I really love this comic strip because, you know, we're all first generation, at least most of us. And, you know, this individual is defending their thesis and their mom's like, well, what does that mean? And so a lot of our parents, you know, might not know what our experiences are like, and they don't know or understand the stress. And so we get excited over the even like every little step milestone. And they said, well, don't tell me anything until you're officially done. I feel like this is kind of like that example. So I just kind of added this kind of as a sense of comedic relief, but this is, you know, what it's like. And so, you know, what does graduate school look like? So as far as structure goes, you know, with undergraduate programs, there is less autonomy with what you are allowed to kind of study and learn, because there is, those requirements that you have to complete, those certain areas. Whereas with grad school, if you're doing research or if you're doing a project, you're in charge of what it is that you're wanting to learn or contribute to. It's your experience and the knowledge that you're expected to learn in undergrad. It's stuff that's already out there, stuff that's already known, versus when you're in grad school, you're contributing back to the field. Say, for example, you are doing art history. Maybe you might be working on like some curation projects, or maybe you are working on a project in theater. You're working, on a degree in theater, and you're putting on the show or performance. And you're working on a project writing about that experience. So those are kind of the things that are different within, undergrad versus graduate programs. If you're working on a research paper, say you're, with political science, you're learning about what's already known, what's already understood, versus if you're writing about maybe policy, you're doing a policy analysis. How does this policy affect the community, or how, or maybe even how does art affect the community? There are things that are certainly interwoven as well within these aspects that you can be able to create different theories that you can have, I guess, in a sense, you can even contribute to publishing because of something that you've concocted, versus that's something that's very limited as an undergraduate student. As far as academics go, in undergraduate programs, you see, oh, I got a 2.8 or I got a 2.7, like I'm doing good. But, with graduate programs, anything below a 3.0 is considered being on academic probation. Anything 3.0 and above is considered being on good academic standing. But that does go to say, if you get a B- in a class and an A on another, so long as your weighted GPA for that semester and total overall is a 3.0, you should be okay. Programs will tell you if a B- is acceptable or not. Most programs that I've seen do see a B- as acceptable. So you should be fine as long as, again, your GPA averages out to that 3.0. You should not be on academic probation. So that's something to also be mindful of. And that's sometimes, it can be a little bit stressful to kind of think about, but once you, again, are invested in the research or the learning that you're doing and contributing to, it's not something that I find that challenging. It's a good kind of a challenge. The courses tend to meet, once per week, and they can be anywhere from, 2 to 3 hours long, sometimes 4, depending on the unit count. And the classes are usually, sometimes they're labs, sometimes, as far as the arts go, they can be, studio classes. As far as, the other majors, for example, in the HSS, they can be guided discussion sessions where, maybe you had a reading the night before and you come into class and you talk about the reading and the topics discussed, the theories. But again, it really depends on the program that you are in. The unit loads are really range from, anywhere from 6 to 9, and they can be seen as high as 12 to 15. Depending on the program and if the program has an internship built in. I don't think for anyone here that would be the case, but for most, for a lot of programs, especially in the College of HHD, those do have internships built into them. But here, I don't think anyone should have to worry about that. But again, the average load is 6 to 9 units. 8 and above is considered, for financial aid purposes, full-time. Anything below that is considered half-time or part-time. As far as 3 classes is usually considered full-time, 2 is considered half-time. So it really depends on how comfortable you are. Most programs, or some programs rather, will require you to be enrolled in 3 classes a semester in order for you to graduate in 2 years. Some programs, maybe they won't mind if you're enrolled in 2 classes a semester if you're taking things a little bit slower. So it really depends on your program as well, and make sure that you're looking into that and you're talking to your graduate advisor for your program when you, enroll. And so, again, I've mentioned this before, the thesis, the project, the comprehensive examination. Those are the options that many programs do require students to pursue in order to complete the program. This is kind of like the final exam of the program. Some programs might offer you all three options. Some programs might let you pick one or the other. And some programs might make you just pick one. Some programs might, for example, only require you to do a comprehensive examination. Some might make you choose between a thesis or a comprehensive, or some might let you choose any of the three. For example, my graduate program let us choose any of the three. I've seen programs that only require you to do comprehensive. Some programs will make you choose between a thesis or a comprehensive. And so a lot of the people who are in the College of the Arts might choose a project because that relates more closely to the kind of studying that they're doing, versus, someone who's maybe in the poli-sci field might do a comprehensive or a thesis because that's more aligned with their interests.
It's more likely that if it's an MFA, let's say in illustration, the thesis and the project are one and the same. You're going to do a show, an exhibition, right, of your work. And if it were the performing arts side, a master's in music or master's in theater, then it's going to be a production, a performance related project, and that will be your thesis.
And so, how do you find a school and a program? What is right for you? So, it's important that you discover your interests. Most of the people here, I feel like, know their interests because they're in the arts. Or, I feel like if you are pursuing political science, you obviously have an interest in policy or politics. So, expand on that. How do you expand on that? And researching schools and programs, and then prepare for your application. That's kind of what comes next for you. So, it's important to be able to attend local, regional, and national conferences or events. Join national discipline organizations if possible. Participate in research projects if that's something that's available to you. And if you're in art, are you able to participate in curating experiences? Can you volunteer at museums, or if you want to go into teaching, can you volunteer at maybe your local library, working with kids and art? Are there internships and jobs in your field that you can take on? Maybe you want to, for example, work in public office. Can you volunteer or intern at a local public official's office? Are there extra upper division courses that you can take that might be able to help you expand your knowledge? For example, if you want to become a teacher, can you take a child development course that'll help you understand the route to teaching, the approach to teaching different pedagogies? Or if you're doing poli-sci, can you take maybe an ethnic studies class or a psychology or sociology class? What are different things that you can do to expand on your interests in order to help you gain a breadth of this is what I really enjoy doing? And then, aside from that, also talking to the faculty in your department, they can really help you grasp a breadth of what is it that you truly enjoy about your discipline? And also, it's important to get to know your faculty because at the end of the day, they can help make recommendations for you. Maybe they might know someone at a different college or university who might be able to help you. You might be exposed to a college you might have never heard of, and they might know a faculty member there in your discipline or your field, or working within the area that you want to work in. And you can apply to that program and then be mentored by that individual who your faculty member referred you to. Or even better, if they get to know you as a person or your interests, they can write letters of recommendation for you for your applications if needed. Those are really important as well. And, especially if you're applying, for example, to a program here at Cal State Fullerton, there's even the chance that your application might be landing on their desk because they're part of the admissions committee. And that might help you in the future as well. If they know your name, if they know your face, they know who you are, they know, the extent of your work, that speaks louder than sometimes the application itself. So that's also really important to get to know who your faculty is in your department. And, when you're looking for programs as well, aside from talking to faculty and understanding, it's important to really do your own research and ask yourself, where is it that I really see myself establishing myself? Do I want to be far away from my family, or do I want to be close by? Are you a parent? Are you taking care of a loved one? Especially with COVID, it is sometimes difficult to ask oneself these questions. It's important to do so. Make a list of schools based off of your needs. Are you wanting to go to a public university or private university? What funding is available at those institutions as well? Are there scholarships? Are there, work study opportunities? As well as what are the rankings for the specific programs? Because sometimes they might be great colleges or universities. You might look at USC, but maybe they might have a program that's not so well recognized compared to a CSU. Their CSU programs might be a lot better. For example, I was talking to a student earlier, and the for counseling, and the counseling programs at the CSUs are top ranked statewide versus a lot of the private universities. So those are things to kind of take into consideration. The programs sometimes might have better rankings than the schools overall.
Because there are different accrediting bodies for different types of programs, and rankings are separate from accreditation. And so the value and the quality of the program may be more tied to their accreditation by the right accrediting body and where their alumni go versus some kind of public reputation it has. So that's a really good point that you bring up about the rankings. Can I just add one more thing before we continue? I hope you guys are noticing in this, this is like the third slide in a row where Christian is breaking down kind of what to start thinking about, and they're roughly chronological. Like figuring out what am I interested in, building knowledges and experiences through different things, getting to know faculty is what you do early on in your process, junior year, sophomore year. We'd like to encourage students to be involved as early as possible. And kind of then when you get towards the end of your junior year in that summer before you start to apply is when you start to get into the stuff like, okay, now let me start finding the school. Let me research the school. Let me make my list of those top 3. What are they going to cost? What are the deadlines? And keeping track as you then move forward.
Yeah, and as Laura said about, for example, the accrediting bodies, one really great example that I use is, for example, the MBA programs across the state. And I love using my alma mater as an example. I went to, and I did my undergrad at Cal State Bakersfield. And a lot of students always, they talk poorly about Bakersfield because of the city or where its location, and say, oh, it smells like cow. But the MBA program is ranked up there with USC, Stanford, and UCLA. It's one of the best MBA programs in the state. They would rather hire a Cal State Bakersfield grad from the MBA program over a graduate from Fresno State. So it really goes to say about accrediting bodies.
Do you guys know where Bakersfield is? Paxton does, yeah. Juliana and Victoria, you ever heard of Bakersfield? Do you know where it is?
Heard of it, but I couldn't guess where it is.
Oh, well, yeah, a couple hours north, yeah.
Yeah, so it's about maybe an hour and 45 north of downtown LA. So that's where I grew up. I grew up maybe 10 minutes from the campus. I did my bachelor's there. It's a very small campus, about 10,000 students. So but it has really great programs, especially their graduate programs. So again, it goes to say you have to make sure you're paying attention to the accrediting bodies, how reputable the programs are, and if it's the best for your field itself, the programs themselves, not just the schools. Because sometimes the people who are working in the field that are looking to hire, they will know. They say, oh, okay, well, they went to UCLA for this major, which it's maybe okay, it's a good school, but maybe, for example, Cal State Fullerton's counseling program is better for the same same discipline, but maybe, like I said, Fullerton's is better. So it really goes to say, make sure you're doing your research too. And these are some of the websites you can use to gather that information. And I'll go ahead and upload this PowerPoint too at the end. Juliana, I'll go ahead and send you the one for HHS, because there's one, or HSS, sorry. There's one specifically for that one, so that way you have that correct information pertaining to yours. Not too much will change, but there is one just for HSS too. So I'll make sure to upload that. So as of now, before we move forward, are there any questions that I can take? And I see one in the chat. All right, awesome, cool. So if there are none, then we can move to the next portion, which is kind of the application process. And so with this one, what does applying to grad school at CSUF or even other CSUs look like? And it's very similar to other CSUs as Cal State Fullerton. So there's generally a two-step process. There's the application to the university itself, and then there is the application to the department. So what that means is that there needs to be the application that's sent through Cal State Apply, and that's calstateapply.edu/apply. And those have opened up as of October 1st. And then there is the supplemental materials that must be submitted to the department. And so those might include, any transcripts, test scores if needed, if you need to submit a portfolio, those documents and materials as well. If you need to maybe submit, sometimes they might ask for a resume if you're applying to, for example, Master's in Public Administration, or if you're applying to more of those programs, they might ask for a resume, anything like that. So you really have to make sure you're paying attention to the department website and checking on there to see if there's any materials that you need to submit directly to them, because those generally will not be listed on the Cal State Apply website. And you could, for example, apply to the Cal State Apply website and not even know because you didn't check the department website, and you could think you're all done, but in reality, you missed this whole entire section of paperwork that needed to be sent over. So make sure that you're always checking both at the same time when you're submitting those materials. So again, each department will have their own specific set of requirements, whether that be, test scores, a resume, or a statement of purpose, a personal statement. And what's really awesome is that the Career Center actually helps you with those materials as well.
Well, some of them. What we can do is offer you an appointment, individual one-on-one, up to a full hour to review your statement of purpose or artist statement. If it was a visual arts or performing arts MFA program, let's say, then you're probably going to have an artist statement as well as a portfolio. And you'd make an appointment with me to go over that statement. For other kinds of master's degrees, let's say you do a teaching credential, then you go back because you were a visual arts major and you get your master's of science in instructional design and technology that they offer through the College of Ed here. So then that may, or I don't know what their requirements are, but they may not want an artist statement, but a more traditional statement of purpose. So statement of purpose, definitely bread and butter for almost any program. It's just that with like the visual or performing arts, it might be more like an artist statement that they are going to have you write and focus on that, your artwork specifically. But yes, make an appointment with me, your College of Arts specialist, or for Humanities and Social Sciences, Juliana, your specialist is Melody Lim, and you can get a review.
Yeah, and as far as some programs, for example, if you want to get your teaching credential, they might even ask you for your educational philosophy. So it really depends on maybe you might not be applying to Fullerton. Some, like I said, some schools might have different requirements. So it really depends. Making sure you're paying close attention. Again, making sure that you are looking at the Cal State Apply website for dates and deadlines. Each program will have its own deadline. So make sure you're paying close attention. Maybe one program's deadline might be, January 31st. One program might be February 15th. One might be March 1st. You have to make sure you're paying close attention because not every program or every school, even if they're within the same CSU system, will have the same deadline. Each program and each department and each campus will have its own deadline. So it's important to be cognizant of all those requirements. Let's see, and these are some of the programs that are offered within, the College of the Arts. Again, if you were looking into the other colleges, there are other programs. I actually have a separate PowerPoint that has every single master's and graduate program, and I can pull that up after I finish this one. And we can, if you have questions about those programs, we can discuss a little more. So are there questions about the application process that I can be able to answer?
Do you guys know when the due date is for for art majors?
So again, that depends
For
on
here.
for example, the specific program, because you can say Master of Arts, but then there are, I believe there are 3 different kinds of Master of Arts degrees. There's like the Master of Fine Arts for like theater, I think it's theater. There's the Master of Arts, and there's Master of Fine Arts, and those are all like the studio art ones, and they're different concentrations.
But even if you're probably talking specifically about the MFA program in illustration, right? Go to the College of the Arts webpage, www.fullerton.edu/arts, graduate programs. Click, click.
Right there.
Yeah, it's on the webpage for the College of the Arts. Yeah.
All right. Could I make an appointment with you? I saw that you posted the link. Could I do an appointment for you to just talk about like my options?
Absolutely.
And like, just to get your advice, because I'm really unsure what to do.
When you go into our system to schedule an appointment, there's actually a drop-down menu of appointment types. So you'll see one that's it's major in career exploration. I think there's a grad school exploration appointment separate from the grad school statement of purpose appointment. So just browse around and pick one that looks like it kind of fits the general topic. Good enough. And then you put some notes in there when you make the appointment and remind me, hey, I was in the grad school 101 session with you and Christian and wanted to talk about these things, and that'll be fine.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. And so now we're going to be talking about funding because there are funding opportunities, and a lot of students are not aware of this. Some students won't even file FAFSA because they don't know that they can get funding. So before we move forward, if you know that you are going to apply to grad school, but you are not ready to file your applications for grad school, apply for FAFSA now. And I say this because even if you haven't applied for grad school, if you know what campuses you want to apply for, when you do submit your applications and you are accepted, those schools will already have your FAFSA on file and they can process your financial aid package a lot faster. So that way, if you, for example, are missing any paperwork, they'll notify you. And because of COVID, it does take longer than normal to process things. So that way you won't be stressing later down the road about like, oh, am I going to get funded? Am I going to get funding? So if you know that you're going to apply to grad school, if you know what campuses, whether they be CSUs or not, file your FAFSA the moment you know you want to apply to grad school. So funding opportunities within the CSU include the State University Grant, and those are eligible for students who are either eligible for FAFSA or the California DREAM Act. One awesome thing about FAFSA financial aid as a grad student is that even if your parents have claimed you in the past, you are now considered independent. So if, for example, you didn't get financial aid as an undergrad, because, for example, maybe your parents made too much money, then that's no longer the case as a graduate student. You're now considered independent. So even if your parents can still claim you on their taxes, you're no longer reliant on their tax information for your graduate program financial aid. And so with the State University Grant, what's really cool about that is it will cover the base cost of tuition. The only thing it will not cover is any state university fees, for example, like the student union fee, the associated student incorporated fee, the recreation center fee, the student health center fee, all of those fees that are added onto the tuition, it will not cover. The nice thing is that if you're attending a CSU, it will range anywhere from $125 to $360. And that's the range of the most expensive and the cheapest CSU. And I say this because I've attended both campuses. I attended Cal State Bakersfield, which has the most expensive student fees, and Cal State LA has the cheapest student fees in the system. So you'll never see it exceed those, those two. So Cal State LA has the cheapest fees and Cal State Bakersfield has the most expensive fees. So that's kind of what you're going to be looking at, anywhere out of pocket per semester. If you're eligible for the State University Grant, 125 to 360, that's like the range. And again, if you are eligible for this, if you're, for example, DREAM Act, you have to have an AB 540 on file, and you must be enrolled at least half time, so at least 6 units. And it'll cover 125% of your program. So if your program is 45 units long, which those are programs usually have internships built in, it'll cover 125% of that. If your program is 30, 33 units, 35, which is the average, it'll cover 125. So it takes you maybe an extra year to graduate. It will cover typically that as well. So just keep that in mind, that this is a funding opportunity for you. That's most California residents are eligible for. There are also, of course, loans. This data is as updated as about a few weeks ago. I went and did my research on this. There's a federal direct unsubsidized Stafford loan, which is your standard student loan. The rate for that right now is 5.28%, which is a little bit higher than has been seen in previous years. It actually went up 1% between now and last year. And so that's kind of something to take note of. If you're planning on taking out student loans, you do have to complete your loan entrance counseling and your master promissory note, or else your loans will not be dispersed. So make sure you're also completing those forms through studentloans.gov. And to log into studentloans.gov, you actually use your same login credentials as the FAFSA application. So make sure you're also remembering that. You also have the opportunity to get the federal direct plus loan for grad students. Generally, most students don't have to worry too much about that because they're given the Stafford, the Stafford loan. So just keep that in mind as well. The direct plus loan is also an option. Those generally tend to have a higher interest rate as well because they're based off of credit. So again, this is as recent as about 2 or 3 weeks ago. That's something to also take into consideration if you're not given the state university grant for whatever reason. But again, make sure you are filing your FAFSA. That is the biggest
I didn't mean to interrupt you. Finish your sentence.
Go for it.
I just wanted, do the FAFSA first. I'm glad you mentioned that again, because I was thinking about it in terms of like the timeline for preparing and getting ready and then making the decision. You said as soon as you make the decision. So that's before you even start asking faculty for letter of recommendations, before you make an appointment to get your statement of purpose reviewed, before you start ordering copies of your transcript. So it's about a year in advance, right? Roughly? A year before the fall you want to apply, would that be?
So so it'd be the same the fall of your senior year. So if you all are seniors now, you're planning on attending fall 2023, you would file for FAFSA now. Or fall 2022.
Okay,
yes. If you're planning on attending fall 22, you file FAFSA starting October 1st of the prior year. FAFSA closes for priority on March 2nd of 22. And so ideally you would have filed your FAFSA sometime between now and March 2nd. However, the later you file, the longer it's going to take them to notify you if you have any holds, if you have any pending paperwork that you need to submit. And that's why it's important to, as soon as you know, to file your FAFSA, because even if you decide not to attend, or if you decide not to apply or decide not to enroll, there is no penalty. You don't get in trouble for filing FAFSA. So you don't lose anything.
Since I had the problem with my FAFSA, every year I'm like denied any grants because my parents are in that income bracket that's like too much. So I never get anything. I always just file it because I have to for like scholarships and things. Say if I were to do grad school and I want to fill out my FAFSA before I attend grad school, can I still like call myself independent, or will they still consider me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it'll ask you what kind of degree you're seeking when for the year you're applying. So it'll say you're still seeking your undergraduate, or will you have earned your first bachelor's degree by X amount of date? And you will say yes, so they'll know, okay, this person is independent. And it'll say you qualify for an independent application. And so it'll prompt the application to file and run as independent. So it'll say at this time your parents' information is not needed, so you don't have to fill that out. And you can do it as a renewal. So renew your, how you say renew your FAFSA application, you would just update the list of schools it's being sent out to.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So that's what you would need to do in that circumstance. So it would just trigger that you're independent because of that aspect. So just keep that in mind. There are also scholarship opportunities through the university. These are just a couple of them, and they also can change depending on what college you pertain to. There's the Alumni Association Scholarship, which is a more general one. This one does award 10 $2,500 scholarships based on different criteria. There's also the Chicano Latino Faculty and Staff Association Scholarship. And these are the requirements for those. Again, I will be sharing this PowerPoint at the end so that you all can access the list of scholarships that are available through the university. And then there's also the Palante Fellowship Program, which is actually the program that I oversee. And so what's really cool about this program is that it's a program, so it's not just a scholarship. You actually get paired up with a faculty mentor. You're required to attend career development workshops, and you're awarded $500 in the fall, $500 in the spring. And so, for example, Juliana, if you wanted to apply for this, you can also apply as well. It's not just for College of the Arts. Students in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences can also apply. We haven't set a deadline for the spring, but it's in the springtime. And again, you are paired up with a faculty mentor. The reason why this is so awesome is because if you're looking, for example, to network, to be guided by a member of the faculty in your career, in your desired career field, they will help you do that. They will help you create those professional development plans in order to kind of help guide you in that right direction. Then we have the Graduate Equity Fellowship. With this one, it's great for especially students who want to pursue a PhD program. The funding for this one is anywhere from $500 to $2,000. This one requires the application, the statement, personal statement, and a letter of recommendation. Again, there hasn't been a deadline set for this, but it's normally in the late spring. The link is here in the PowerPoint, but I will share this PowerPoint again in the chat box after we complete the slideshow. And then there's also employment opportunities that you can use to help fund your graduate career. So there's graduate assistantships, which basically it means you're either working at an office through the university or for a professor. And so what's really cool about this is, it works usually around your schedule, and you work no more than 20 hours per week. So it really helps you balance work and school so you don't feel overwhelmed. To get, more access and information on these, you can contact, the Career Center, the college that you're attending, the departments, or if you're looking for example, a teaching assistantship, where you even have the opportunity to teach your own class, reaching out to faculty is a great way to get information on that. And again, you do get paid for these. So these don't get directly dispersed to pay your tuition. These are actual paychecks that you get. I don't know if Laura has anything to add about those.
I was thinking about it, but I don't know the details of what the College of the Arts assistantships and teaching positions are. Maybe just want to underscore the point, though, that this is like a paid student assistant position on campus, but reserved for those students who are in graduate programs. And yeah, very different department to department. Depending on what the opportunities are. Some programs, broadly, right, depending on what school you're talking about, not just CSUF, there could be that this grad program comes with guaranteed you will have a teaching assistantship that's kind of built into it. Pretty sure that in the College of the Arts, none of the either visual or performing arts master's or doctorate programs have a TA position tied to it. Don't quote me, but I'm 99% sure. Unfortunately, they don't have those right now.
For example, but for HSS, it's actually very common. It's a very common practice to have teaching associates or teaching assistants within the college. So Juliana, if that's something you might be interested as you go through grad school and you want that teaching experience, that's actually something to look out for as well. As you transition into grad school, we also do have other resources on campus. Right now, we have the Office of Graduate Studies, which is in College Park, which is the building across the street from the main campus. I always say it's across a building that looks like Lord Farquaad's castle in Shrek. And it's about 10 stories high. and we're on the 9th floor. So CP 950, we're here from 8 to 4:30 in the afternoon. If you do want to set up an appointment with me for a one-on-one as well to talk more about the grad school process, you're more than welcome to set that up as well. And you also, through the Office of Grad Studies, you have access to advising, academic policy support. For example, maybe you want to take a leave of absence in grad school for whatever reason. It's like, how do you do that? Graduation check support. As you're approaching the end of graduate school, how do you file a grad check? And then we have the Graduate Student Success Center, or the GSSC, which currently the GSSC is closed due to, COVID restrictions, but we are planning on opening it up later in the fall. It does have, computers, charging stations, whiteboards. It's a study space. It does have graduate success consultants. And we do host workshops like this one in there as well. So it's something to look out for as you approach grad school here at CSUF.